Stiamo percorrendo una galleria terminale della regione del criptoportico, del primo piano di Priscilla. A sinistra e a destra i loculi sono ormai vuoti e alcuni secoli fa.
The deep, sometimes irregular galleries twist every which way. Different levels lead to areas in which shadows of the past speak to us of a faith that was both lived and celebrated. This fresco depicts a young woman and child, a theme that will be repeated countless times down the ages. It is to date the earliest testimony that has come down to us of Mary's maternity, a birth that would assume a central place in history. This child's birth would divide human history into two eras, the one that came before and the one that came after him. Afterward, the events of his life seem to vanish in the mists of time. Bethlehem becomes a memory, Nazareth his daily reality. The information that follows is fragmentary, only later to be seen as filled with expectation, as eloquent as the silence of those hidden years.
Everything is available in the market, from fruit to clothing, from jewelry to spices. Nazareth, its jumble of houses spilling down the hillsides, whitewashed walls contrasting with the grey-green tones of the olive trees and the bright green leaves of the almonds and prickly pears, forms a natural and inexpressibly graceful picture. As indicated by its name, it is truly the flower of Galilee. This guidebook quote is outdated. Today, Nazareth is a different place in every way. Pilgrims move in an unending stream to and from the sanctuary of the Annunciation, the ancient synagogue, the Virgin's fountain. One thing is sure, the original meaning of the word Nazareth, the flowering one, is no longer appropriate. But the memories recorded in the scriptures and handed down in the records of first-century pilgrims remain alive and have been continually reinvigorated through the ages.
The old and the new exist side by side. Modern architecture rubs shoulders with the few remnants of the small village of Galilee where Jesus spent the greater part of his life. One can still glimpse the enduring signs of the years Mary and Joseph spent here, of that mysterious visit destined to turn the life of a young woman upside down, of the land through which a Galilean named Jesus traveled in carrying out his mission.
Today, Nazareth is an Arab municipality with a mixed population of Christians and Muslims. A Latin bishop, vicar of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, lives here. Religious communities compete to establish houses here.
Mary and Joseph had just returned to their homeland, to Nazareth. Jesus was with them. The difficult days seem long past now, even though they were still vividly remembered. Mary recalled,
"The young woman is with child, and will give birth to a son, whom she will call Emmanuel."
That day, within the walls of her modest home, the words of the prophet Isaiah suddenly became clear. Her troubled thoughts, her questions, the unexpected presence of an angel, his announcement of the conception of a child who will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High, all gave way to precise answers that quickly became reality.
You see before you the Lord's servant. Let it happen to me as you have said.
She could not help but reply in this way, with all the fervor of youth, to the one who promised that the Most High would shelter her in the shadow of his wing. Mary, a virgin who had no knowledge of man, would give birth to a son destined to save his people from their sins. Her small dwelling, its well, her relatives, a few head of livestock, all were left behind so as to fulfill a civic duty. But their absence would be a short one, so she and her husband Joseph thought. Just long enough to travel from Galilee to Judea, to David's town called Bethlehem, to be registered. It was a demanding trip due to the unpredictable weather and the long days spent on muleback, traveling over difficult terrain, but always with the thought of returning home immediately afterward. Instead, Mary was to say how long we were away from Nazareth. The prophet Micah had predicted,
She who is in labor will give birth. His greatness will extend to the most distant parts of the country. From you, Bethlehem, will come a future ruler of Israel whose origins go back to the distant past, to the days of old.
Mary remembered these words, and in thought relived those hours wrapped in deep mystery. In Bethlehem that night, like every night, the shepherds were keeping guard over their sheep, but it was to be a night unlike any other. Mary had known this. Isaiah's prophecy echoed on the night air.
A son has been born for us. A son has been given to us, and dominion has been laid on his shoulders. Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace, to extend his dominion in boundless peace. I bring you news of great joy, a joy to be shared by the whole people. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger.
So said a voice, causing the shepherds to waken with a start and set off at a run to verify the news. And they saw that everything that had been written had come to pass.
Today, the shops that ring Bethlehem's main square all offer more or less the same goods. Shopkeepers quickly learn to identify a customer's nationality, and they adjust their words and prices accordingly. Jesus' birthplace is just a short distance away. All you have to do is enter the Basilica of the Nativity through a small door, cross the majestic interior made up of 5 naves, perhaps stopping to contemplate the monolithic columns of rose-colored stone and the impressive beamed ceiling of the church, and then you reach the grotto itself.
Where is the infant king of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose and have come to do him homage. The shepherds would have stood aside, asking each other the reason for the visit of such important people, remarking on their regal bearing and elegant clothing. Were they here because of the newborn child? Were the gifts they had brought with them valuable? They entered the stable, Mary recounted to the women of Nazareth, and said they had followed a star, and that this star had stopped over the place where the child was. The people listened. Falling to their knees, they did him homage. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. Who were these mysterious visitors? People seeking the truth? Philosophers? Astronomers? Astrologers? Wise men from Persia, Arabia, Jordan? They came from the east, following a star, Mary repeated. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. The ancient prophecy of Balaam, the seer of Pethor, a small village on the banks of the Euphrates, had been fulfilled after centuries and centuries of silence.
It's only a short distance from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. Mary and Joseph entered the city by one of its many gates, perhaps the Valley Gate, or the Sheep Gate, or Ephraim's Gate. The temple was not far away, but the milling crowds and the labyrinth of narrow streets made swift progress difficult. In the marketplace, products of every type were for sale. People haggled heatedly over the price of daily wares. Today, nothing has changed. Mary and Joseph gazed around them with the enthusiasm of a young married couple.
Every firstborn male must be consecrated to the Lord.
Joseph reminded his wife. Hurry, we must go to the temple. We also have to find a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons prescribed by the law of the Lord, he added. The rites were performed according to the law.
On the 8th day, the child's foreskin must be circumcised. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you. The covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised.
God said to Abraham,
As for a woman, when the period of her purification is over, she will bring the priest a lamb 1 year old for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or turtle dove as a sacrifice for sin.
Then the strange words of old Simeon at the entrance to the temple as he held the child in his arms. Now, Master, let your servant go in peace as you promised, for my eyes have seen the salvation which you have made ready in the sight of the nations. And also the praises of God on the part of Anna, a woman very advanced in age, who never left the temple, serving God night and day with fasting and prayer.
She came up just at that moment and began to praise God. And she spoke of the child to all who looked forward to the deliverance of Jerusalem.
Mary listened quietly, storing up all these things in her heart. Further words would have been pointless.
Let it happen to me as you have said,
She courageously replied, after the angel sent by God had announced the splendid promise of her maternity. Herod the Great. Even today, his name commands respect everywhere. Architectural evidence witnesses to this. traces of a sumptuous and powerful past that speak of him. They are a record of the power and violence of a man who was a blend of political calculation, passionate love, and obsequious deference to the power of Rome. Where is the infant king of the Jews? The wise men asked on their arrival in Jerusalem. King Herod was disturbed. Where is the infant king of the Jews? The wise men repeated. The demand sounded like a threat. The solution to the problem would be terse and bloody. Kill all the male children of Bethlehem and its surrounding district who are 2 years old or less. Herod could not allow himself distractions or weaknesses.
He was dealing with a baby boy born in a cave, a child lovingly welcomed by others who were equally poor. A star had announced his birth. Why did you do this, Herod?
Asked the child's mother. Mary and Joseph secretly fled Bethlehem that night.
In the quiet of Nazareth, their sharp-edged memories of Egypt take on softer contours. The trip to Egypt was undoubtedly a tiring one, above all because of the scarcity of water. For Mary and Joseph, it was enough to escape, to leave their own country as quickly as possible. They had a choice of southbound routes. Perhaps they chose the road leading to Hebron, about 30 kilometers southwest of Jerusalem. After a brief stop there, they would have once again set out, this time for Beersheba, on the fringe of the Negev desert. From there, it was another 50 kilometers to the Mediterranean coast and the borders of Egypt.
Their arrival in that first Egyptian village was providential. There they found simple people, just like themselves, a small refugee family. Mary recalled little about the trip, almost as if she wanted to forget what had happened. The slaughter of the baby boys remains a sinister moment illuminating those events. The massacre is recorded only by Matthew. Flavius Josephus does not mention it. How many children were murdered? Meanwhile, Jesus increased in wisdom, in stature, and in favor with God and with men.
In Nazareth, the days pass by uneventfully. The men work in the fields, if they have a piece of land to cultivate, or devote themselves to various crafts. The women perform household chores, lend a hand in the fields, and care for the livestock. Each family unit is strengthened by religious traditions that safeguard its unity and harmony. When he was 5 or 6, Jesus would have begun to attend the synagogue, where he learned to read the sacred texts.
לא סלקה דעתך, לכתיב, ולא יעלין חלב חגי עד בוקר. לא סלקה דעתך, לכתיב, ולא יעלין חלב חגי עד בוקר. סלקה דעתך בחוגה הוא, תרבה לחגה התלהי, ודילמה הכי כמה לרחמים.
Flavius Josephus writes,
If one of us is examined on the law, he can recite it more easily than his own name. In fact, we learn the law as soon as we are able to reason, and it is engraved in our soul.
The little family of Nazareth is bound by the rules. The Sabbath is the day of rest in memory of the creation and the liberation of the Hebrew people from their slavery in Egypt. On the vigil of the Sabbath, Joseph lays down his tools, while Mary prepares the meals for the following day. The fire burns all night long, so as to provide light the following morning when it is time to go to the synagogue.
Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Labor for 6 days, doing all your work. But on the 7th day, you must not do any work. Neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your servants, male or female, nor any of your animals. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day.
The priest proclaims to the assembly,
The years go by. Jesus goes to Jerusalem with his parents for the feast of the Passover. Jesus is 12 years old. In the temple, all those who heard him were astounded at his intelligence and his replies.
"Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" he responds when Mary asks the reason for his disappearance.
But they did not understand what he meant.
Nothing more is told us. The son of Mary and Joseph grows to manhood in silence. He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as he usually did. He stood up to read, and they handed him the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. Unrolling the scroll, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, for he has anointed me to bring the good news to the afflicted. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to captives, sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim a year of favor from the Lord." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the assistant, and sat down. And all eyes in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to speak to them. This text is fulfilled today, even while you are listening.